Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Bandofla. I'm your host, Febzi Hussein, and I am delighted to be joined by a very good friend of mine, Tyehimba Nosakhere, also known as Ty. Ty, welcome to the show.
Give thanks. It's a pleasure being here, my brother.
So Ty, we're in the middle of Black History Month. We have a view on this podcast around this issue that, it is not really a concept that should be confined to just a solitary month. It clearly is something that we should always be promoting and always, develop awareness on. So we're going to touch on some pretty key questions, and I will be really grateful for your honest thoughts on this important discussion. So I guess the first starting point, what I should say as well to listeners, Ty is a regional officer at the Midlands and East Coast region, and he's also a founding member of the National Race Leads Network. And I'm also on it, so we're good friends, but never mind. Ty, on Black History, why is it so important that we celebrate Black History? What does it mean to you?
I think the first thing to say is, let's just remember that there hasn't always been a Black History Month. So that's the first thing that we need to understand and, appreciate the fact that we've needed this, because no day, no week, no month, no year was Black history. So here we are with a situation whereby we can at the very least appreciate that this is not enough. And that very question that you posed, or the position that you say that you've adopted, in terms of it shouldn't be a 1 day, 1 week, 1 month thing. It's a 360 degree thing. It's all year round, you know what I mean, that we have to do. And it's important for so many reasons. The first reason is that we people carry so much load. There is so much demands on us to not only appreciate the sufferation and the tribulation that still continues, and the oppression that, if it's not happening directly to us, it's happening to our brothers and sisters, and we're aware of it. We carry these things every day and do the day job and the night job and look after the picnic and look after mama, dada, look after everyone and carry these things. And then on top of it, have to be in a position whereby we can also be trying to fight the very thing that we're having to endure. Challenge the thing we're having to endure. And what I feel about Black History Month is it sometimes it just gives me an opportunity to pause and appreciate the glory of our people over many centuries. Link that with what we're doing now and find context to our existence, because we don't exist in this bubble of oppression. It's connected to before, and it's connected to what will happen after. And so this month is important because it allows us to focus and think about our rich history, our rich heritage, and also about the challenge that is ahead of us. It's unique because it gives us a chance to unite, but it also gives us a chance to educate and uplift at the same time. So if we're going to do it all year round, we've got to come together at some time to plan that. And for some of us, the only real jar to our, systems that we get is it's Black History Month. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And even I need that sometimes, because I'm carrying this, I'm doing that, sometimes you're fighting on every front,
Yep.
you know, and you forget there is this need to acknowledge and appreciate how great we are, you know, because we're only here because of the struggles of others, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we would have been wiped out a long time. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. I think that's a great way to start the podcast. I'm going to touch on a couple of other important areas a bit later on. For example, education and the curriculum. And I guess a nice little precursor to that question is around, you know, are there any particular heroes or heroines as far as Black history is concerned that you want to talk about and share with Bandofla listeners?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is there are millions, yeah, millions. And for the ones who aren't there, they're already being acknowledged for their greatness. There are those who have the huge potential to become heroines and heroes, you know, people of significance. But it is important for us to recognize those who along the way who have been particularly significant in the way in which they've inspired us. And, you know, one such person for me, you know, is Nelson Mandela. And for this very crucial reason, yeah. I cannot imagine how incarceration for 27 years for a person who was full of fire.
Mm.
I can't imagine how you do that and overcome your desire to fight and fight probably to the death, the oppressor. Do you understand? And wage war against them. And for that man to achieve freedom and maintain dignity and grace and choose not to let the situation of power that he had become completely directed by hate.
Mm.
To exercise love in that moment, there's no words that can describe how highly I value that type of ability to do what is right, even though you have been sorely afflicted yourself. The power to say unification rather than wage destruction.
Mm.
You know, because remember, you know, hate never created anything but more hate, you know.
Absolutely.
Love that has the ability to cure, and wisdom as the ability to allow love to flourish, and to take the position that he adopted in that circumstance, having suffered so much as a passionate and stalwart fighter for freedom, to me shows a grace and shows a wisdom that is beyond anything that I have seen elsewhere. So he, for me, is one of my greatest role models and a massive inspiration, because I struggle with anger.
Mm.
You know, sometimes, and I know some of us just,
I think a lot of people do, brother. When you see injustice,
yeah,
it's natural to lash out. But as you say, that underlines the greatness of the man, of the person, how he resisted that kind of negative influence, which I guess it is. He was in solitary confinement for most of the time.
yeah, 27
Makes
years,
it,
yeah,
makes it even more amazing.
unbelievable. And not to come out with hate, you know, you know, and so often many of our challenges to oppression, we have unfortunately found ourselves in a position whereby we do become driven by hate, you know, because I hate oppression. Yeah, I hate wickedness. I hate inequality. I hate unfairness, you know. But
Bad word, that word hate, you know.
yeah, but distinguishing between, you know, those things, you know, and people, yeah, is extremely, extremely important, but often difficult to do when you are hurting so much yourself. And, you know, arising above the pain and rising above the sufferation to still feel love for humanity, to me, great quality to have and one I aspire to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, I guess the natural flow from that point is the kind of wider picture and the issue around education. So, you know, I know that we're fortunate on the podcast that we've got quite a wide readership across the UK and even a global platform. In terms of the UK government, on Black history and in a educational context, there's clearly an issue in terms of the lack of Black history in the UK school curriculum. If we've got a message for the government and the education secretary, what should we be saying to them? You know, because obviously at the moment, Black history isn't really any part of our curriculum.
Well, I think it's really important to look at some of what is happening in Wales, and you know the different approach that is being taken there in terms of Black history. And let's be clear here. When we start to talk about Black history, you know, what is it that we mean? Yes, we do mean the story that hasn't been told. Yeah, okay. The story that has been falsely presented. Yeah, but we're also talking about truth. Yeah. So I have a real difficulty with any government, you know, with anybody that doesn't want to tell the truth. Yeah, it's simple, you know, and that's why it's a nonsensical, you know, objection for any government to have, because sooner or later that truth is told anyway. Would you prefer, you know, our young people to learn about what is true in school, or to have to learn it outside? And then what you have is, as we all experience, this lack of confidence within the actual system, you know, because the system teaches his story, you know, doesn't tell her story. Yeah. The system gives us mystery. Do you know what I'm saying? But doesn't give us our story, you know? So the stories are entwined, but we're never getting the full truth. And the truth about our presence, even within, you know, this country, has been, you know, marred by presentations of us rioting, you know, marred by, you know, stereotypes that have been constructed and perpetuated, and the approach to Brexit in itself, you know, was formulated on it. These are untruths that, where you haven't provided people with the truth in education, you've created a fertile ground for these things to be perpetuated. So from my view, it is important for us to not only say Black history should be taught, but tell the truth.
Yeah.
Just tell the truth, you know? Don't talk about the First World War, the Second World War as though there were only white people fighting. Yeah. You know, you've got to tell the truth. And that's what, again, what Black History Month does. It gives us the opportunity to look at what actually happened and what's actually true. And the children white, black, of any color, need to know truth. That's what they need to know, because that is what cures our communities. When the children are told the truth together, yeah, okay, and there's no dispute, it's clear, you know, when teacher says 2 + 2 = 4, yeah, at the end of the day, everyone leaves the lesson with that written in their book, and when they're revising, they revise 2 + 2 = 4, because it's set there. The black children aren't going away thinking, well, oh, actually, no, we're going to write it differently. The white children aren't doing that. They all go away with the same information. The unfortunate thing about not having black history in what is being taught is that the information that is so-called truth that is being spread is, of course, flawed and weighted to exemplify one particular race. And that isn't the truth. And that's why imbalance and inequality is perpetuated by our education.
Yeah. No, I mean, the point you make about the world wars, even from the First World War, the contribution of the Commonwealth countries was significant. The West Indies regiments, the Indian regiments, the Indian Army.
Absolutely.
And you look at the film Dunkirk. I remember when that was released. There was quite a lot of kickback. It's a great film, but it's just a shame you'd never think there were any brothers in the army. You know, it was just an entirely white cast, which is very disrespectful to the men and women who served in the forces.
Not wanting to interrupt you, Febsy, but just to say that that was replicated at the early stages of COVID, when they were clapping for the NHS, and the brothers and the sisters who were dying disproportionately were not reflected at all at that point.
No,
it's always the case in war.
Yeah,
we die fighting, you know, and are not mentioned, you know, in terms of that effort that has been put, the ethics behind us actually taking part in these, you know, our values in terms of being prepared to fight, you know, what is right. It's a disgrace, you know, for these people to have not been mentioned and been forgotten, and it's a disgrace.
Yeah, I think at this moment it would be an appropriate time to give the Black Curriculum UK a plug. They do some brilliant work around, you know, promoting some absolutely fantastic education. I think there's some brilliant blogs that have just been released around the link between Liverpool and the slave trade, and you know, lots of really interesting Black history stories. So if you want to find out more, I would definitely encourage listeners to check out the Black Curriculum UK. I think it's .com, but certainly if you search it, you can find it. I think it's on the point about education, Ty. I think that was one of my favorite subjects at school, but it was like white history lessons. There was absolutely nothing that I remember, and I grew up in Tottenham, right? And you know, we were like, okay, this is history, so you know, but now we have the benefit that, you know, we can now reflect on those on our own education journeys. And when you look at everything that's gone on in history with colonialism, imperialism, you know, and it's not, you know, yes, there's some nice parts to history in terms of, you know, the monarchy and stuff like that, but there's actually an awful lot of history that is quite shameful, and we have to look through the lens of truth. As you say, we have to grow up as an equal. I can just imagine children doing history and just seeing history about white people, and you know, maybe they didn't think it at the time, but there's bound to be kids who are thinking, wow, there's no black people in history. We weren't about.
I learned about William Wilberforce. I did not learn about Harriet Tubman. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so this is what I'm saying. You know, William Wilberforce, great. I'm not going to take away anything from anyone in history, but what I'm saying is that, you know, it is important to appreciate that the imbalance of telling one side or a part of the story creates, you know, and that imbalance is not just the imbalance, because a lot of us look at being educated in terms of Black history and Black experiences and Black achievements as part of us building our identity. You know, especially in the time when I was growing up, it was about building your identity. It was like finding out, self-discovery almost, yeah? But we also have to understand it's about the truth, yeah? So for the average white child, yeah, okay, what are they teaching that child? You know? And if you're not teaching them the reality and the truth, you know, then what you get is a situation whereby they are not discovering themselves. They're not able to appreciate themselves because their self is being based upon falsehoods. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it damages all, you know, to have that situation. And you know, you're quite right to point it out and to, you know, I've always been involved in supplementary schools and wherever we can try to you know, plug that clear gap that there is, because the other issue that there is, and you know, I'm sure we've got no time today, is to look at the lack of achievement within education for Black, you know, children, when we know without a doubt there's not an issue of intelligence.
Yeah.
No issue of intelligence. So why is this happening? And one, you're not learning anything about yourself, you know, and two, what you are learning is so flawed that when you go out back into your community, you are finding a different picture. You're picking up different. I was educated in a sense, as you should be, at home. You were taught things at home. They were not being reinforced in school. They weren't, because my parents are Jamaican, so I'm learning about the history. I'm learning about things. I'm learning about, you know, Marcus Garvey. I'm learning about Nani and the Maroons. I'm learning that because I'm a son of a Jamaican, proud Jamaican woman.
Yeah.
But I'm not learning in school, you know. I'm learning about people scrolling images on a cave. and I'm there. I'm not learning, you know, about anything that is connected to me. And I'm not saying that that's an untruth. What I'm saying is, you know, sometimes if you're only showing a piece of the picture that you have chosen that exemplifies you, then by virtue of doing that, you're devaluing others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so much we can touch on, because there's one thing that it does make me angry when people have this image and a view around Africa as a continent, and you know, the struggles of people in Africa, and then you look at, you know, what happened in history, because there was a major historical event in 1885, the Berlin Conference, where leaders in Europe, joined by some people from America, and I believe there was an Ottoman involvement as well, they literally carved the continent for themselves to strip it of assets. And to this day, yes, there are some countries that are beginning to, you know, prosper, but the setbacks, you can't begin to quantify and assess the damage that that colonialism did. I think we need to know about historical episodes like the Berlin Conference.
This is what I'm saying. As soon as the funny thing is that once you start to tell the truth, it's extremely difficult to then stop. And if you start with the Berlin Conference, then of course you've got to keep telling the story, and I think that's where people, very, very clearly, people within the powers that be in this country in particular, know that covering up things for so long that it's going to create, obviously, serious backlash, as it should, when people appreciate and realize just how systematic oppression has been. It's easy to assume that oppression is kind of like spontaneous. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's actually systematic. Because Africa is such a massive place, the assumption is that you can't sit down and carve up Africa, but you only have to look at the straight lines on the map to know. I mean,
well, they're the borders. Those borders are the borders that came out of the Berlin Conference.
Exactly.
Africa was entirely different before that. So,
Exactly.
But I mean, I think that we could have a discussion on this wider subject, because on reparations, for example, there's a very strong growing campaign. And again, I don't want to go back to this anger issue again, but when you hear certain people in the government saying, yeah, it's not, it's not a particularly nice part of our history that we're proud of, but we need to kind of move on now. That happened a long time ago. The bloody wealth of this country was built on the blood, on the deaths of I don't know how many millions of black slaves on the cotton fields and the sugar plantations. And the government has to fix up on this issue, but I think that's a subject that we can cover, but because it's a very emotive subject. And all those people who are campaigning for reparations, I really, really hope that there is some justice that, or something that they can call justice on this issue, because, that's just so wrong what's happened.
One thing about the truth is, Fevs, it's there. So, great job that has been done by the oppressor and their agents to withhold, conceal as much as they have, but it's there. And sooner or later, the truth will be revealed, and you're not going to get away with saying, yeah, way back when, because at the end of the day, you're still living off the wealth of our homelands. You're still living off that. Titan Lyle still broad and big. You know what I'm saying? And it's still selling sugar. You understand? So at the end of the day, we've gone through this even with the statues. What do the statues represent? Yeah, okay. And remember, there's a back argument or a counter argument to the statues being torn down, which is, but they, these people did exist and they're there and such and such and such. Yeah, they did. But what are we saying? Two things. One is, do you really, have you told the truth about this person? And secondly, if you tell the truth about this person, will you put up a statue of this person? Yeah, okay. But they're prepared to put these things in our faces. That's like someone looking in your eye and saying, what's your problem? You know what I mean? Can't you see clearly? These things are there, they're in our face. And what people are frightened of is not so much that we, will kind of understand the truth of this. But that those people as well, you know, who I've talked about, the people who are not, you know, of Black, Asian, or minority ethnic, you know, heritage, that they themselves learn about the truth, you know, and that's why I say to you, oppression for us, you know, just creates a situation where the inequality impacts on all, because people are ignorant, because they've been taught to be ignorant, they've been conditioned to believe what actually is clearly not true, you know. And the way that the shutters drop down when, as soon as government has taken a stance, is unbelievable, because, you know, you've got to bear in mind that what I said earlier is we carry this burden with us. Imagine if you wasn't born without this burden and somebody says to you, yo, take this, carry this, you know, you're going to say, why? Why
Exactly.
should I carry this for you, you know? And, you know, we have to bear in mind that, you know, it's so important that our liberation, yeah, is not just about the liberation of us, it's the liberation of this world. Because without that, without us being able to find a way in which we can heal humanity, then this is a war that just goes on to the end of time.
Yeah, and there are some truly barbaric episodes in Africa with what Belgium did in Congo, and the German government in Namibia. Interestingly, there was an agreement on reparations with the Namibian government very recently, Ty. Quite a large sum of money, which the Namibian government obviously agreed. But there's a lot of the indigenous tribes that are very upset because they don't believe it goes far enough because of effectively the attempted genocide of a lot of the tribes and the group. So, all right, we're giving that a good airing, brother. And I think that we've demonstrated to listeners that I think that's a subject we might need to come back to. So on going into kind of a political angle, because I always like to dabble with politics on Bandofla. Everyone knows how much I hate the Tories, and for our listeners abroad, they're the Conservatives, they're the current party in power in the United Kingdom or in England, who are really treating those most unfortunate in society in that, you know, they brought the country to their knees. But anyway, I digress. America elected a Black president, Barack Hussein Obama, 45th American president of the United States. And, you know, given how polarized America is, that was quite an achievement for America to deliver a Black president. I just wondered what your thoughts were in terms of where are we in the race to elect a Black prime minister? Yeah. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, let me first just say that I was one of those people who was hugely inspired and felt a massive jolt of adrenaline when Barack you know, became, when it was, well, from the point it was clear that he'd won, that was it for me. Yeah, okay. And, you know, let's just revel in the optics. Yeah. Black family, White House. Yeah. Okay. Prior to that was always the most powerful person in the world is that president. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So you have the most powerful man, yes, that is a man of color in that White House. And you can imagine what what ripples that sends when you look at something that is impossible and someone shows you that actually it's not impossible. You know, we can do it. Yeah. Okay. And that sends a jolt and sent ripples to many people, you know, many of us who have been completely, you know, disconnected and defranchised in terms of politics and in terms of opportunity. We saw in that actually you can achieve something that appears to be impossible. So it gave me that jolt. Yeah. Okay. And I've just, again, one other thing I've got to say is, when you look at what followed in terms of the next person who took up that role, yeah, okay, the attributes of Barack are stunning attributes, you know. Look at all of the things that we're told are supposedly right and correct about family, you know, about how you carry yourself, you know. I was mentioning Michelle today because of the ripples from Michelle that have touched so many women and girls, you know. Look at the grace, you know, and poise, yeah, that we people are supposed to lack. We don't have any of this, you know what I'm saying? With which, whether he got things right or wrong in everything, what I'm saying is, look, the way in which you carry yourself in that position, just like with me now, my mother will tell me, you make sure you carry yourself properly. And I'm sure when we look at that, he carried himself, and Michelle and the family carried themselves in a way that everybody has to, I believe, respect. Particularly when you look at the fool and idiot that followed afterwards. Yeah. So at the point when Baraka became president, I knew right there and then that this is something that wouldn't be happening here. I looked at it and said, why? You know, although America has got so much issues and problems, I still think it was much more likely to happen there than here. Yeah. Okay. And when I look at where we are today, sadly, I think that it will take much longer. I think that the odds of it being a Tory are high, you know. I think that strategically, you know, they are so, you know, able to overcome what might be their natural instinctive, you know, aversion to such things. But where money is concerned and power is concerned, remember, this is in the DNA of those people. And so for them, I think that they would not only love to do that because, again, strategically, I think it would place them in a position whereby they would be trying to take much glory for it, you know. But I also think that they would like to strategically outmaneuver Labour, as they did, or feel they've done with the minimum wage, you know, and claim something as theirs when it's always been something you would expect from Labour. You would expect from Labour that they would be able to present, you know, people who you could clearly see were almost in the succession run. But who are we talking about? who do we see them presenting? You know, there should be enough. And I think that so often people have to make themselves, you know, a contender rather than Labour making them that contender. And they're two kind of different things. And, you know, those sisters and brothers that are in that situation in terms of in politics, you know, my heart goes out for them who are trying to do it cleanly, you know, and do a proper job, and also trying to progress, because boy, it's a tough road.
Yeah, I think that's a very stark assessment, Ty, and it's the fact that I agree with you. The fact that it's more likely to see a black prime minister in the Tory ranks than Labour is presents me with a real issue. You know, I would have thought that within Labour we would be pushing a very strong kind of black representation. But even in the shadow cabinet, you know, people who are coming through the party, yes, there's some amazing black MPs, but they don't seem to be kind of in the whatever the inner circle is in the Labour Party. They're a bit on the periphery, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, but we'll see on that. Listen, brother, we have had an amazing discussion. I hope listeners have enjoyed it. I could literally carry on speaking on Black history and race equality issues with you for hours and hours, and we may well revisit one or two subjects, because I think there's some debates that I think we are deserving of more discussion. I should say, for those, I do normally like to have a good gender balance on our show, and we did have 3 sisters who were hopefully going to be with us on this discussion, but for one reason or another, they weren't able to join us. So Charlene Nkum, Taranjit Chana, and Sonia Davis, hopefully we'll get you on the show sometime in the future. But for now, my sincere thanks to Tyehimba Nosakhere. Ty, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with you on the show at some stage in the future again. Thank you very much, brother.
My brother, give thanks and peace and love. Yeah, blessed love.